some extent. But what are you guys trying to do here? What are you trying to accomplish? I want to sort of interact with you a little bit and find out what your motivation is for being in the fashion industry. While you're here, what do you want to do when you grow up? Does anyone want to tell me what they want to do or why they're here? Why don't we just get everyone to talk? So let's start with you here, and we're just going around the class. And then like 5 seconds, tell me why you're here, what do you want to do? Okay. Good. Visual merchandiser, excellent. You? So another visual merchandiser. How about you?
Gain a more well-rounded, I guess, knowledge on the fashion industry and exactly where I want to fit into it.
Good. Okay.
I want to be a designer and eventually own my own store and have some lines of my own in different categories.
Excellent. Okay.
I would like to have like my own collection in store and produce like for aftermarket.
Excellent. So 2 designers right there. Okay, how about you right there? Right after.
Hello.
Hi.
I want to be a designer, and my huge goal is to make my own collection and open my own store, but not in Canada. I got a goal of
Awesome. Doesn't matter where, it's a global world now, so excellent. What about you?
I want to be an athletic wear designer.
Athletic designer, okay.
So yeah, I want to like have my own store and like clothing. So
Excellent. You?
I want to be a full-time business owner and like contribute to the world through fashion.
Excellent. Good, well-rounded response.
I'm not sure yet, but maybe styling, designing. Like I like the grungy look, so like kind of bringing that back.
Okay, good.
My name is Rosa, and I would like to be a designer, but also a fashion director. So hopefully both.
Excellent. Good for you.
I'm Alicia, and I kind of want to have my own fashion empire. Like do designing, publishing, styling, everything.
Excellent. Very lofty goal. How about you?
I'm Lori, and I want to be a fashion designer and have my own stores.
Good. Okay, so a lot of people in the same boat here. Back there.
I am Ian.
You want to be a what, sorry? What?
Comedian.
Oh, comedian. Awesome. Right. You're in your place.
I'm Kwame and I want to be short image.
Excellent. That was my goal too. You?
I'm Terry Ann, and I want to be a fashion editor and eventually own my own magazine.
Good for you, okay?
I'm Nikandra, and I'm not really sure what I wanted to do, but I like fashion, I like business, and that's why I'm here.
Good for you, okay?
Okay, I'm Edison. I don't really know what I want to do yet. I'm just kind of going through the course and then seeing what I like.
Excellent, okay.
I'm Gabby. I want to be a fashion editor as well. So I'm kind of here to learn that side, and I really also like writing in English, so it's kind of like incorporating my own fashion into English.
Excellent. Answer?
I'm Jenny, and I love to work in the magazine industry. I don't really want to just work in fashion because everything's related, both culture and music.
Good for you. Okay, so my motivation for being in fashion when I was your age, when I was 18 or 19 years old, was I just wanted to party and get laid, and I thought the fashion business was like a perfect place for that. There'd be tons of girls, there'd be tons of fashion shows, it'd be very glamorous, and like what better way to spend my dad's money on education than just fucking around. Okay, so
Like I want to videotape you, but I can't.
So what I hear right now is, we have some stylists, we have some designers, and then, a lot of fashion editors and bloggers. But one common theme is that you all aspire to own your own business, which is great. It's really excellent. I think you aspire to because in the fashion business, you're going to find a lot of grungy jobs, and then, to make some real money, you kind of got to be at the top. It's got to kind of be the master of your own destiny. And to be the master of your own destiny, business owner, the guy who's raking in all the cash, and the guy who's employing 100 people, it's going to take a lot of work to get there. You certainly do have to be motivated, but you also have to be knowledgeable, very knowledgeable, in fact. So what I thought maybe I'd do today is I'll just tell my story a little bit, how I got to where I am and what I do, and then we can just go into a general discussion and ask questions, etc., etc. Sound good? Okay, so first you guys know the company Moose Knuckles? Yes, everybody actually knows it? Nobody doesn't know it? Okay, that's really cool. I remember the first time I saw a guy wearing a Moose Knuckles coat on the street that I personally had not sold to him, or he's not a friend or family. I stopped my car and I drove up and I was like, "Hey dude, nice coat." He's like, "Yeah man, I love this coat." You know, so I've come a long way from, you know, seeing my first coat on a complete stranger to now. We're sold in over 30 countries around the world. We just opened 5 stores in Korea. We're opening another 2 stores in Russia and 5 stores in China next year. So we'll have 12 stores next year. We'll be doing revenue above $10 million, which may seem like a lot, but it's actually not that much. Because we're going to try to get up to the $100 million level. We're going to try to take this brand as far as we can. But I'm not alone right now. That's part of the story. So I went to Ryerson after I dropped out of poli-sci. There was no chicks. There was no good parties. There was too much reading. So I did a year of poli-sci and I got into fashion. Like I said, with the goal of just, you know, fucking around, thinking that if I get a job, hopefully my job will also be my entertainment. You know, so somehow if I'm in the fashion business, I'll be going to all the great fashion shows, all these great parties, and, you know, socializing with models and just stuff like that. It kind of turned out like that. It's different when you go on. So I studied fashion marketing, and then while I was studying fashion marketing, computers were just sort of booming. So this is back in the 90s, like 96. It's 2000. So 96. 96 I started fashion school, and the internet was really just coming alive. We still had modems. We didn't have high speed back then, so you can imagine, you know, to open up an email still took at least a minute just to open up one page. When I got into computers and I started fixing people's computers, and then through the graphic design classes we had at Ryerson, I learned Photoshop and Illustrator. This is back when it was like version 2. I don't know, 15 or something now, you know. So I was studying fashion. I was learning about computers, and all of a sudden I picked up these 2 skills, which was Photoshop and Illustrator. And I found that those were becoming the staple, the main tools to be used in the fashion marketing world. All visual communication was no longer being done with freehand or drawings. It was all being done on the computer. And you had this whole industry of graphic designers who were just now starting to transition over into the computer side of things, doing it on Photoshop and Illustrator. So when we learned these skills at 18, 19 years old, we found that there was just an abundance of companies out there that could really use this skill. They're like, "Hey, you can do websites?" I'm like, "Yeah, I can do websites. Sure, that's easy." I mean, I really didn't know how to do it, but you know, as a 19-year-old kid, I knew how to open up Photoshop and make a few pictures, and then you could just look at the HTML code, you can kind of copy it. And so it was really easy to figure out the websites. And all these companies out there, not necessarily fashion companies, just any kind of company, wanted a website. And I was like, "Yeah, I could build a website." So I started building websites. It was really an easy way to get a job. And so from there, I ended up working for a big computer company. I learned more about computers, I learned more about web design, I learned more about graphic design, the application of graphic design, not necessarily graphic design. So all through university, I was employed by a computer company. So when I graduated, oh yeah, and I never, during university, I never bothered to intern, which is a huge mistake. Okay, I should have interned. When I got out of school, all my buddies were getting jobs where they interned. Flare Magazine, the Hudson Bay Company, Old Renfrew, you know, whatever sort of, you know, fashion employer in the city that they were working for them. And I was like, "Fuck, I can't get a job. Like, this is, you know, this is terrible." And I was like, "Well, I have a different skill set. You know, I know about computers now, and I know about fashion, and computers are going to be used in every part of industry. So maybe that's where I should specialize." So I went to a fashion company that ended up selling computers to the apparel industry. It was called Electra. You guys, anyone familiar with Electra? They make CAD/CAM equipment. Okay. So CAD/CAM is computer design. CAM is computer-aided manufacturing. Okay. You know, in fashion, you got design, manufacturing, right? Some people design them, some people make them. So when you're making these clothes and you're making them in quantity, you have big factories, and these factories now rely on technology in a big way to make the clothes. So, you know, I'd studied fashion marketing, and I learned about computers, and now my job was working for a technology company, and I sold hardware and software specific to the fashion business, okay? I used to wear a monkey suit to work, and I worked up in Yonge and Finch, and all my pals were working downtown, in all the fashion houses. You know, it was just entry-level jobs, and here I was a salesperson selling computers, and I was like, what the fuck? I went to fashion school, and here I am with a job like selling computers. I mean, this is not what I expected. This is not what I wanted to do. But it's what I was doing. And I was making probably $60,000 back when I was 21 years old, which is a lot of money back then. It's like making six figures now. And all my pals were making like $24,000 working at entry-level jobs. And I was like, well, you know what? For my ego, at least I'm making money. I'm not in the fashion business like them. I kind of was, I just didn't realize it. Just because it wasn't glamorous. I wasn't, going to all these fashion parties, and I wasn't dating models most of the time. So, I wasn't sure where I wanted to be or what I wanted to do. It was nice to hear all you people here today say that you kind of, know where you want to go. If you know where you want to go, that means you can sort of work this career path from where you are today and how to get there. And you can actually strategically plan it out and get where you want to go as quickly as possible. Because if you know where you want to go, you just know you got to take one step in front of the other until you get there. You may not necessarily know the path, but all you know is if you keep taking one step in that direction, you will get there. So I didn't know at this point is basically what I was trying to say. But I was making money, okay, which was cool. I like making money. And making money is going to be the most important ingredient to running your own business. Because it's all going to come down to money. We'll get into that in a second. So I'm selling technology. And in my job, I got to go to every design and manufacturing business in Canada and try to sell them my product. Yes, I had to cold call them and introduce myself. And yes, I was selling a suite of products, software and hardware, that all these customers needed. So they were eager to answer the phone when I called and said, hey, I want to sell this to you. They're like, shit, yeah, we need this. The world's changing. Patterns are not done on paper anymore. They're done on computers. Cutting fabric is no longer done by hand. It's done by machines. So what you're selling, we need. Whether we buy from you, or you, it doesn't matter. I need to see you. So I was like, okay, great. So, I was cold calling, going in to see these customers and meeting them. And I, first and foremost, had to understand what they were doing in order to sell them a solution. Right? I had to understand what they were doing. So I had to figure out every single one of my customers' business. I ended up working this job for about 5 years. I got really good at it, and I ended up making about six figures before I was 25. More importantly, I learned about everybody's business. I focused mainly on the manufacturers. I just had an easier time working with manufacturers for whatever reason. So that was mostly pattern making equipment and cutting machines. Okay? Cutting machines cost $250,000. Okay, so this is what I was selling. So I started learning about everybody's business. And then I started figuring out who was successful and who was not successful. Who was growing and who was contracting. Okay? So then I really started to get motivated. I said, okay, I think I know what I do want to do. I'm here selling to Don Green and Michael Budman from the Roots, right? And I remember when he came and spoke to me when I was in first year fashion, and here I am 7 or 8 years later, and now I'm in his office with a monkey suit on selling him hardware and software. I want to be like him. And that was sort of the point where I was like, okay, I know exactly what I do. I want to have an empire like Roots. Okay, so now I knew. Now I knew what I wanted to do. Then there was a question about, okay, how am I going to get there? How do you become Don Green and Michael Budman? First thing I figured out is that they come from wealthy families. Their father, Irwin Green, owned an auto parts manufacturing company, and he was doing roughly $100 million a year in sales, so he was huge. So these two kids with really no relevant design experience somehow created a shoe. I don't know if you guys know this about Roots. His first product was a shoe. You guys know it? Yeah, with a negative heel. It's really weird. It's like the heel was lower than the toe. It was like the opposite of a high heel. Anyways, that's what Roots. Roots started as a leather goods company. They made the negative heel. They opened their first store in Yonge Street, and then they got into sweatpants. And they got into more leather goods, leather jackets, leather bags, and then their clothing empire expanded from there. So I looked at these guys and I was like, well, how do you do that? What do you need to do? And so I was like, okay, well, first I want to be a businessman, and I think I need to make money. Because these guys came from money. I didn't come from money, so how the hell am I going to get money? I just, like, is someone going to give it to me? Isn't that how it happens? You have a good idea and someone gives you money? No, that's not how it happens. Guys, ideas are a dime a dozen, okay? Money. Money is everything. You get the stupidest idea and lots of money, and there's a good chance that you will make that idea work. Even though it's not very good, it's just because you can afford to make it work. When you see a lot of shit out there, you're like, oh, I could do better than that. It's like, yeah, you probably could, but you haven't yet. And therefore, someone who's had a worse idea than you actually did do it, and that's why it does exist out there, right? When you all walk through the malls and go, I can do better than that. Like, this is crap. This, I should be doing this. Okay, well, fine, do it. But to get there, you need, A, the idea. It doesn't even have to be that good, but you need the money, right? So going back to my story, so I started making some money. And I thought, okay, well, this is it. I'm making money. I'm making more money than my friends. I've seen I'm a wheeler now. This is great. I'm gonna open my own business. So instead of selling these cutting machines, I'm gonna buy myself one of these cutting machines, and I'm gonna open my own factory. So my first step is I wanted to be like one of the guys that I'm selling things to. I wanted to have a nice big building. I wanted to have a nice big office, and I wanted to have employees, and I wanted to be the guy signing all the checks. You know, the guy saying, no, I don't want to buy that, as opposed to, you know, please, sir, will you buy my shed? Okay. So when I was selling these cutting machines, I was talking to a lot of customers. They said, you know, we can't afford $250,000 for a machine. Do you know if there's a service out there that does cutting on contract? And I was like, no, I don't know of that service. You know, you got to buy a machine if you want it done. And after talking to so many customers who expressed the same thing to me, I was like, bingo, there's a business idea. If I got my own machine, I could be a textile cutter. I don't even have to have my own product. I'll just call up everybody I know and say, hey, do you need shit cut? I have a machine. And they'll be like, fuck yeah, I don't have to buy one if you can do it for me. So I ended up just buying this one machine, okay? Now, I didn't have any money to buy this machine. Okay, well, I'm going to sort of backtrack a little bit. So first, I rented a machine, okay? I rented it off a guy who ran it from 8 o'clock in the morning till 5 o'clock at night, and he was a friend of mine. I said, you know, at 5 o'clock when you close shop, can I come in and use your machine and cut other people's stuff? And he says, well, no problem. I don't mind if you do that, just, you know, leave me cash on the table at the end of the night. So I started doing that. And then I realized, okay, the only way to make some more real money is if I actually own my machine together. Own my own machine. So I get lost in the story. I haven't told too often. It was around this point that I was making so much money between my day job and doing this cutting factory that I just started partying my ass off. Okay, I just got lost in the party. You know, I started sleeping in. I started missing things, mistreating my girlfriend, wrecking my cars, buying motorcycles, just, you know, stupid shit you do when you're irresponsible and you get a little bit of money. So I decided the best thing that I could possibly do for myself was to learn more. First name.
Okay.
Oh.
Hi.
All right.
Sorry.
Can you guys follow me? Am I losing? I haven't told the story in a long time. Right. So, you know, to take the next level from a guy who's just a cutting service to having his own company like Roots, I obviously don't know enough. Okay? Because if I knew enough, I'd be going in that direction instead of partying my ass off. And I just found that I was not going in that direction of owning Roots, or being like Roots. I was going in the direction of being a total loser, blowing all my money on stupid shit. So I sort of refocused and said, okay, if I want to get to where I need to go, I got to do something. But I don't know what it is. I guess I should get a job. I was looking for jobs, and I didn't want to be a software salesman anymore. I wanted to really get into the industry. So I went and applied to all the big fashion houses and found that I could only get a job paying about $25,000 a year. I'm like, I was making like 6 figures last year. I'm not taking a job for 25 grand. That's like interning, okay? But the reality was I was not qualified to work for any of these fashion houses because I had just been a software salesman. You know, all my education in my undergraduate, I sort of transferred that to computers and then that to being a salesperson. And, you know, I couldn't work for Whole Red Food as an assistant buyer because I just didn't have those 2 years of interning and then those 2 years or 3 years of a career working at the lowest rung just so I could learn. So I soon realized with my lofty entrepreneur goals, I missed out on the whole internship and paying my dues working for a big company so that I could see how these big companies run. Okay? I thought I was so smart, I could figure it out myself. Turns out I kind of hit a wall. Made some money, then I kind of hit a wall career-wise. I couldn't get a job where all my peers were. Now my peers were starting to make more money. They were becoming buyers. They're in the $60,000 salary range. They're pretty happy. You know, they're buying their first BMW. They were going out to restaurants every night. You know, wearing high heels wherever they go and just thinking they're clean shit. It was great. They seem to have got what they want. They sort of achieved that goal. Okay. So for me, I was like, fuck. You know, I don't want to go back and start working at the bottom rungs. Now I'm 25, 26. I think I better go back and learn. Maybe I just need to go back to school. And I really didn't know what to do. I just needed to know, and knew I needed to do something different. So I applied for a master's program at FIT in New York City. And so that's when I went up. It was the first year of the grad program at FIT in New York City. When I got there, it was a whole other world. There was an exchange program. So the master's program was done in conjunction with 2 other schools around the world. One was in Paris and one was in Hong Kong. And so these 3 fashion schools during the master's programs all decided to have the same curriculum. and all would agree that they'd specialize in one area of fashion, and then that they'd share that knowledge. So for instance, in America, the FIT school decided that they'd focus on the mass market. The biggest segment of the fashion business in America is the mass market. Walmart, Target, those kind of stores. They're the ones that generate the most money. Hong Kong decided they would specialize in manufacturing, because let's face it, most of the goods in the world are made in China, right? So their master's degree would have a heavy component on manufacturing. New York school said they'd have a heavy component on retailing to the mass market. And then the school in France said, well, you know, this is where all the luxury goods businesses are based. Louis Vuitton, Hermes, Chanel, that kind of stuff. So we'll focus on the luxury goods market. So, right? So these 3 master's programs decided to do that. And throughout the course of these 2 years of this master's program, we would spend 2 weeks at each respective school. So me going to school in New York City would have the opportunity to go to Paris and learn about the luxury goods business, and then go to China and learn about the manufacturing business. Okay? It was a really, really excellent program. I couldn't believe how much I actually learned, and I surprised myself and says, wow, the things that I did not learn from Ryerson, for whatever reason, I mean, it's just your undergrad, maybe it wasn't in school, I don't know, or maybe it was just my attitude, or maybe my ears were plugged, you know, when I was going to school. I just couldn't figure it all out in that undergraduate degree. So this master's degree opened my eyes. I said, okay, so retailing to the mass market, that's where you make some money. If you want a $100 million company, you're going to have to target the mass market. If you're going to make $100 million, you're going to have to make those goods somewhere, so the cheapest place to do that is China, so you better learn about that. And then the luxury goods industry, I mean, this is teaching you about all sorts of things. Just products that everybody aspires to have, and desire, and want, and motivations why people actually pay money for certain things. And the marketing goes all around it. So now I felt like, okay, now I think I understand this business a little bit better. I think I know what to do for my next step. You know, I know how to get to the next place. So the program, during this program, they asked us to do a master's thesis. And this master's thesis is going to be, and you've got 2 years to do it, and if you know to graduate, you're going to be judged in front of a panel of judges who are going to tell you whether your idea is good or not. It wasn't just an idea, it was the idea and the whole application of how to make it work. Essentially, we had to take a defunct brand, reinvigorate it, and launch it globally. And just present exactly how we're going to do that in every single detail possible. So that the industry panel would say, where's your money coming from? How are you getting it made? How are you shipping it? You had to know sort of everything, okay? I mean, 2 years to do this. Figure everything out. So a defunct brand, and I was studying in New York City, and I was like, you know what's a defunct brand? There's a company in Canada it's called Kodiak. And I'll call it defunct because it's now reached the lowest tier of the distribution. It's sold in Walmart and shitty stores like that, and they make, you know, shoes for $6.99 and bags for $7.99. So it's bottom of the barrel shit. I figured for this project I'd reinvigorate it, okay, into a high-end brand and launch it globally. So in my studies, I discovered, so I was taking a Canadian company. I was actually the only Canadian student in the class. Everyone was a little bit intrigued by Canada. And I suggested to my partner, the 2 partners I had in this project, I said, look, if we do something Canadian, I think Canada's really having a good decade, place in the world. Everybody seems to respect Canada. Everybody seems to have a favorable opinion of this country. So why don't we try to make a product that we can brand after Canada? Kind of like Tommy Hilfiger is branded after America, or Ralph Lauren is kind of branded after America. My partner says, yeah, that's pretty easy. That sounds good. You know, we'll brand Canada. So whatever we do, we'll associate it with Canada. Let's go out there and find other Canadian companies that are having success on a world stage and see how they're doing just that. So we went out there and we found this company called Canada Goose. This is back in 2004. Everybody knows Canada Goose, right? They're doing what? They're 150 million now? So they're clearly a Canadian success story. And I'd never heard of them at the time, but, you know, going on the computer, researching Canadian companies doing well in the fashion business. There was Canada Goose, and there was also a company called Richelieu. Richelieu made parkas. They're based out of Winnipeg. They've been around for 100 years. They're less known. I'll get into them later. But there was these 2 companies that caught my attention and made me realize that, yes, there is certainly a market out there to brand Canada. If you brand Canada, people will just be automatically interested, just because it's Canada. So, what were the products that these 2 companies were making? They were making down-filled winter carpets with furniture and goods. That's what they were doing. And the world was gobbling them up, just loving the shit out of them. Whether they were good coats, I think there are good coats, they're nicely designed, and the marketing behind them. The whole recipe that they put together was a winning recipe. But the world was also a changing place. The rest of the world looks at Canada as sort of a freak of nature, we're this huge landmass with no people. Okay? Have you guys heard of Japan? Okay? Japan is 100 million people. Okay? It's the size, like, if this is Canada, you know, Japan's like this. Okay? It's got 100 million people. We have 35 million people. America's got 350 million people. China's got over 1 billion people. Okay? And we get bigger countries than these people. So you guys been to Europe? A lot of you been to Europe? You see how smaller apartments are, the toilets are like in the bedrooms, that kind of stuff. Small cars, all that kind of shit. Right, so the billion people in China, the people in India, you know, they look at Canada and go, what the fuck? You guys have it so good in Canada. Free healthcare, it's all safe, all this room, there's roads, plus you can immigrate there. I mean, this has got to be the greatest place in the world. Because we're here, we don't necessarily think what other people think of us, because they're out of sight, out of mind. But that's really what's going on in the global environment right now. People are really looking in Canada in an aspirational manner. This is the coolest freaking country in the world. I mean, America may be the coolest country in the world because they created Arthur Fonzarelli. But, you know, America's a little bit screwed up. The American foreign policy has caused damage to their reputation because we really didn't have a foreign policy, because we really don't have an army, except, you know, our peacekeepers, because we don't have any guns to back us up. That actually put us in a more favorable light. So, you know, what Canada Goose was doing, what Richelieu was doing, really caught my attention. So I said, okay, I'm going to build this into my plan, okay? So my idea is going to be winter parkas. Stole from Canada Goose, no big deal. However, now my marketing strategy, it can't be the same as Canada Goose's, because then I'd be just doing what they do. And then I'd kind of be a copycat brand, the second guy in line, he does the same thing. You know, it's not that creative. So I was, okay, I gotta do something else. Originally, my idea was, okay, this brand is going to be, Canada, so some people around the world think we're a socialist country. So I'm gonna make clothing, I'm gonna pretend it was made by the Canadian government. And the Canadian government issues these clothes to all the Canadians who have to work outdoors in the wintertime, right? And in Canada, a great deal of our population works in the mining industry, the fishing industry, the forest industry, anything outdoors, right? A lot of us. So, because we work outdoors, the government gives us these freaking clothes. It was a kooky idea. I kind of liked it. I got excited about it. Some of my peers didn't like it so much. But the point was, I wanted to attach something Canadian to this brand. I had to. Canada Goose was using the Arctic. Their slogan was, we'll keep you warm in the Arctic, right? Roots is using cottage country, you know, nice lakes, mountains, and that kind of shit. So they're using the landscape. Canada Goose is using the landscape. So it's like, yeah, we're a pretty country, and we got this nice landscape, but not that interesting. I don't want to be the third guy doing that, the fourth guy doing that. So I was like, okay, that's not going to work. I was lucky enough to have one of my teachers, who was also a board member, who was judging my project. Her name was Jeanette Nostra, and she's the president of a company called G3 Apparel. G3 Apparel is the largest outdoor company in North America. You've probably never heard of it, but you've heard of every single one of the brands that they do. Okay? They're a licensing company. They don't own any of their own brands. For Liz Claiborne, for Nautica, for London Fog, etc., etc. They make all the winter coats for them. Okay? They do about $1.4 billion a year in sales. Okay? Yeah, and you gotta wonder, so when you see these coats, he goes, who's behind this coat? Is this Esprit? No, Esprit has nothing to do with it. The people who make these coats just have a license, and they pay Esprit a small design fee to distribute their coats. So I was fortunate to be in front of someone who's very, very knowledgeable about the coat business. So she actually took interest in my idea. And she knew that Canada Goose was doing very well overseas, and she knew that she didn't have that product with her. So she got into my project, and that was good, because it meant to me that my greatest teacher, the teacher who was most successful, she was obviously teaching just for charity, just to be nice to give back to the community, because she was a multi-millionaire. She knew a lot, and if she's taking interest in my product, maybe I do have something here. So she says, what are you going to call your coat company? And I think I was going to call it Canada Heritage. And she says, I understand that you want to attach Canadian elements to your coat, but where are you going with this Canada Heritage shit? Someone told me you had this crazy socialist idea, like it's clothing that the government issues. I was like, yeah, that's kind of my angle. She's like, why don't you attach yourself to something else Canadian? Like, I don't know, you Canadians you guys are funny. And I was like, yeah, we're funny. I was like, yeah, you got it, that's right. And she's like, and you guys like hockey? And I was like, yeah, we like hockey. You're talking to a hockey guy. So all of a sudden now, like, she's sparring with me with ideas, and I was like, well, this kind of makes sense. I'm going to attach myself to someone Canadian. I'm not going to do the art that Canada Goose already do. I'm not going to do Roots Lakes, Cottage Country, shit like that, because Roots already did it. But yeah, something funny and something hockey. Okay, what's it going to be? She goes, why don't you call yourself Duck Duck Goose? I was, that's retarded. So, you know, I threw back there, why don't I call myself Moose Knuckles? And I knew that meant cock and balls. I was a big fan of camel toe. And so I knew what the male equivalent was, which is Moose Knuckles, right? And I really just said that back to her, thinking that she's not going to have any idea what I meant by Moose Knuckles. But she said something so stupid, Duck Duck Goose. Yeah, right, I'm going to call my company Duck Duck Goose. So fuck you, Moose Knuckles, bitch. That's honestly what I'm thinking. And she's like, no, that's perfect. And I was like, why? She goes, well, what does it mean to you? And I was like, well, moose is a Canadian animal, and knuckles is the spirit of a hockey fight. Boom! And it's funny. She's like, it is funny. So there you go. Now you can do that. You can attach Canada to your brand. Okay? At the same time, Canada Goose coats were getting really popular, and I believe in Danny Reese's own words, Danny Reese is the owner of Canada Goose, is that Canada now has the reputation of making the best winter coats in the world, just like Switzerland has the reputation of making the best watches in the world. Correct? Pardon me?
And chocolate.
The chocolate, sure. So now Canada is getting this reputation for making best winter coats. So this business idea is all of a sudden starting to make more sense, okay? Now I think I really got something. Like, I'm really taking steps forward with my idea. But again, it's just still an idea, but it's gaining ground. So I'm going to make winter coats, and they got to be Canadian. They got to be made in Canada, which doesn't make sense because I can produce them in Asia for a fraction of the cost. Making things in Canada is kind of difficult, but they have to be made in Canada, just like this watch has to say made in Switzerland. Otherwise, it's not worth $4 grand. Good. So this project's coming along, and this is what I come up with. It's going to be funny, blah, blah, blah. I passed school. My project did exceptionally well. I think I got the best grade in the class. But that's it. So school finished. Back to Toronto. Okay, and now what do? Fuck. I spent all my money. I got student loans now. I got to work. And I was like, yeah, I went for a job interview. I got hired at the Hudson Bay company. Hudson Bay. So I got a master's degree now, right? So I got a Hudson Bay HR department. I was like, yeah, I got a master's degree. You should hire me. She's like, wow, we'd love to have a guy with a master's degree. This is great. So your master's degree, so your salary level was $60,000. And I'm like, well, fuck, I can't work for 60 grand. But that's all there was. I looked around for other jobs I couldn't get. So I ended up working in the buying department at the Bay, and I was a replenishment manager. I wasn't cool enough to be a buyer. To be a buyer, you got to start a buyer training program. You got to kind of work your way up, and it's a long grind to get there. It's definitely good. If anyone that has the opportunity to be an assistant buyer or to be in the buyer's training program in any of the department stores here, I highly recommend it. You will move up the career ladder fast. Within 10 years, you should be making pretty decent money, and it's an excellent launching board to any other position in the fashion industry, especially if you want to be an executive. So anyways, I took the jobs. I didn't have much choice. The Hudson Bay company wasn't doing very well at the time, so a lot of people were getting fired. It was just kind of a miserable place to be, and I was like, this is not fucking fashion. At least when I was a buyer, I get to meet with suppliers, and they give me free underwear and shit like that, and be all great. If I was in the visual merchandising team, at least try to be in the lingerie section, that'd be kind of fun. So I was like, holy shit, like I go and got a master's degree, and this is what I'm doing. I'm working in Hudson Bay. This is not for me. It's for talented people. This is not for me. So I was like, oh shit. And then I heard about an auction. The factory was closing down. It was the Tip Top Tailor Factory. And I had sold to the Tip Top Tailor Factory many years ago their cutting room, which means all their big cutting equipment. And I heard this factory was going out of business and they were auctioning off all their equipment. So I was like, ooh, maybe I could open up my cutting factory again, but this time I could own the machines if I could just buy them. I'm just going to explore this. So at this point, I basically knew that I had to get out of the Hudson Bay company because it wasn't for me. I don't like being bossed around. I don't like showing up at 8:30 and that kind of shit. And I don't like spreadsheets, right? I wanted to be the king. I wanted to be the master, work for myself, just like you guys. I really wanted that, so I knew that leaving the Hudson Bay company would be the right thing to do. However, I can't leave the Hudson Bay company until I have another job because I have to pay rent and I have to eat like everybody else. So quitting would just be really stupid, unless I had something to go to. All right, so the Tip Top Tailor Factory's going bust. We're moving to China. So I show up, there's the auction, The owner of the factory there is like, hey, well, good to see you. Are you bidding on the stuff today? And I was like, yeah, as a matter of fact, I'm going to open up my cutting factory again. He's like, oh, good, man, good for you. I hope you win. I hope you win. I was like, great. I don't know how I'm going to win, but I'll try. Because you need money. I didn't have any fucking money at all. I had $5,000 on a credit card. So I went, and to get a paddle, you had to put down $5,000. So I did. I put it on my credit card. I got a paddle, which means I could bid. Okay? I was looking at these machines going, I can make so much freaking money from these machines. If I had these machines, I know exactly where I'm going to get these contracts. Because remember, when I was selling these machines, I talked to every single person in the country that could have used one of these machines, and I figured out their business. And I remembered that a lot of these guys didn't want to buy these machines because it was a lot of money, it was heavy overhead, it was maintenance. So they would probably be more interested in contracting out the cutting to a guy like me, who'd worry about paying for it. I wasn't really going to pay for it. And who knew how to use machines, because I worked for the company for so long, and I figured out how to use the machines. They started training people on how to use these machines. So I was just looking at the machines and I gotta have them. Like, I know I can make this business happen. If I can just make some money with this, I can try to go on and do what I want. Maybe I can do my coat company, right? So I bid on the machines, and I won the machines. It was $100,000. The whole, I got actually 2 machines, 2 big long spreading tables, 2 computer systems, 2 spreading machines, a bunch of parts, just all sorts of shit. I mean, it was like 4 truckloads worth of stuff. And so I won the auction, which was great. But now I'm going to have my cutting factory, but I didn't have any money to pay for it. So the owner came up and he's like, Bill, Vince, congratulations, that's so awesome. I'm so happy. Like, I wanted you to be the guy who bought these machines. And I was like, look, I got one problem. I don't actually have any money to pay for it. And he was like, what the fuck? You're joking. Yeah, slap him back. I was like, no, seriously, I bid and I don't have any money. He said, well, what the fuck? The auction's open. You just fucked me. Like, you just fucked me to $100 grand. There's no one here to bid. Now, who am I going to sell these things to? And he's like thinking in his head, like maybe the second lowest bidder, but it started at like $80,000. There was like one other bidder guy. I didn't think he was serious. Anyways, the other guy wouldn't buy it, so I was stuck with it, and he was actually stuck with me. And I says, I'll tell you what, I got a deal for you. I'll pay you in 1 year's time. I'll give you $8 grand a month for 12 months. And he's like, how are you going to do that? I was like, I'm going to set up my cutting factory again. Like you said, I got contracts all over the place. I swear to God I'll be able to do this. And he's like, okay, if you miss one freaking payment, I'm taking the shit back from you. I was like, fine, no problem. Can you let me 20 grand to move the stuff? He's like, how was I going to get out of here? They put the machines in this room about 10 years ago, 14 years ago, and they built the walls around them. And these machines were really from Lauren to me, and they weighed about a ton, 2,000 pounds each. They're pretty big. And they don't fit through doors. Basically have to take walls down. And so he said, yeah, fine, I'll lend you the 20 grand to move these things. But I'm not taking this wall down for you. Go buy yourself a fucking sledgehammer and take it out yourself. So then I had it for 2 solid weeks. I had to pound down 3 walls, like the size of that, the big cylinder box. I caught it, probably should have got an extra $1,000, got a jackhammer, and done it properly. But no, I actually pounded them down. So we wheeled the machines out, put them on tractor trailers. We shipped them to another factory. I went to this other factory and I says, hey, remember me? I'm like, hey, well, how's it going? I was like, remember you guys wanted to buy a cutting machine? I'll tell you what, I got some cutting machines. I know your factory's too big for you guys, you have extra space. Well, let me rent some space off you. And he was like, yeah, it's a great idea. We have tons of extra space. Business isn't going that well. And yeah, you can put your machines in here and this is what I'll charge you per month. And I was like, I don't know. You're not going to charge me anything per month because I'm just going to cut for you. I'm going to cut all the shit that you need to have cut at a reduced rate. And that way I don't have to pay you electricity and I don't have to pay you rent. And he's like, okay, we can work something out. And then around the same time, he came to the owner of the factory and says, well, there's a big contract going around all of NAFTA, North America Free Trade Agreement, for bulletproof vests. George Bush was going to war with Iraq at the time, and it was after 9/11. And there was Afghanistan going on. So George Bush was buying bulletproof vests for all the Afghan soldiers and all the Iraqi soldiers. Okay? And whenever George Bush spends money on military, he has to spend it within North America, because you're not allowed to spend American money in China for military shit because it's kind of secret stuff. And that's how the American government stimulates their own economy. When they have to do defense spending, they always spend it domestically. And because Canada's got a free trade agreement with the States, when they put contracts out, Canadians are allowed to bid on these contracts. Now, for the bulletproof vests, it's really easy to sew them, but it's really hard to cut Kevlar. Bulletproof vests are made of Kevlar, and each layer of the vest was 36 plies of Kevlar. Have you guys ever tried to cut Kevlar, fiberglass, or carbon fiber? Impossible, right? Like you just cannot do it. You cannot get your scissors through it. It's like taking paper scissors and trying to cut fabric, like denim. It just kind of doesn't work. You got to get special fabric shears, right? The alloy is stronger in the fabric shears is why they cut, and they're sharper and more precision. So these machines I had were actually kind of perfect for cutting 36 layers of Kevlar. Perfect. Except nobody wanted the contracts because it killed their machine. The machine was too expensive to be cutting these bulletproof vests because they needed these machines for their knits and their jeans and all that kind of shit. And if they figured they took this contract, they'd get fiberglass or Kevlar particles stuck in the machine, and the factory would just be a nightmare. They'd be sewing up these nice knit tops, and the customer would buy them. Well, why is it so itchy? It's because it was covered in fucking fiberglass and Kevlar, right? So nobody really wanted this stuff. And all of a sudden I had these machines, and I was like, unlimited supply? They're like, yeah, they'll give you as many as you can cut. And I was like, I could cut till the cows come home. I don't give a shit if I break my machines. I'll destroy my machines. You know, I probably could get 5, 6 years of life out of these things, but I don't care if I get 1 year. I could probably make a few $100 grand cutting these things. So I did. So I took the contract, and I made bulletproof vests day and night. Actually, that's not true. Day. I still had some day job. So I quit the Hudson Bay, and I was making the bulletproof vests. It was all great. I think one weekend I made 20 grand, which was fantastic. It was a lot of money. So I paid this guy off entirely. So I bought the machines, right? So all of a sudden now I own my own machines. Okay. All right. So I got my business. I'm kind of the man now. I work for myself. I can show up at work as hungover as I want. Be the worst dresser in the office. So I'm the man. My ego's really being stroked. Like I'm good. And I got money. I bought a building on King Street, so now I have an investment. I'm doing what I thought, a 27-year-old guy should be doing, succeeding in his career, being a businessman, exactly where I wanted to go. But then after doing that for so long, maybe about a year's time, I kind of got bummed out. Like I was working in a factory in Scarborough. I was eating a Swiss chalet for lunch every day, and I really wasn't satisfying my urge to be part of that fashion scene downtown, to sort of make, my name globally, to contribute something to the fashion world, to bring a product to the world that you'd be recognized for. To me, it's kind of an ego thing, actually. Cutting the bulletproof vest just was not satisfying enough. Okay, so again, that was just a step in the right direction, because now I figured out how to make things. I owned my own machines. I had my own building, even though I didn't pay rent. I had that, but it wasn't enough. But I knew I was getting there. I was going in the right direction, especially because of money. Okay, so I called up my buddy in New York City, the guy I had started the project with, my master's degree project with. And I said, hey man, things have been going really great for me down here. I've got this factory, and I'm making money, and I've got lots of free time. I'm thinking about starting up the Moose Knuckles plan, the business plan. He says, oh man, fuck, I'm just working as a graphic designer. It sucks here. I'd totally move to Toronto with you, and I'd start this project up with you. And I was like, sweet, okay man, that's perfect, so come on down. So we moved from New York, came down, we lived together, we made the logos, and we made our first coats up, and we grinded it out together. Yes, we made our first coats, and then we tried to take them to market, and we got 1 or 2 stores to buy from us. So 2 of us spending so much time doing this, we probably did like $5 grand in sales in the first year, but it probably cost us $20,000. So fortunately, I had a job. My cutting factory was doing really well, so I could afford to do that. But I was just trying to think, how hard it is to try to start up your own fashion line. When you're young and you're out of money. 20 grand to make 5 grand, plus it took me like 6 months of time. I mean, that's like a negative job. It's like, it's not really working. I was like, well, so many people try to start fashion lines and it never really works out. If it does work out, they end up going out of business because they can't afford it anyways. I was like, man, this is a really tough contract. This shit's hard to do, You really need money. So I started going around saying, okay, well, I'm just going to try to borrow some money. I went to all the banks and they're like, nope. Why couldn't I borrow money? Because I didn't have any money to give them as collateral. Actually, I had a building, which I used that later. So I realized I couldn't get money. Me and my partners just, we weren't getting along anymore. It was just a stupid idea, this Moose Knuckles thing. He'd been here for 6 months and he hadn't made any money and it just cost him money. And he started telling me to fuck off and I started telling him to fuck off. Because that's what money does to you, or the lack of money. I don't know if you guys are going to get married, but make sure you have money before you do. So, can't keep carrying on. Like, maybe it's just a stupid idea. Well, I don't think it's a stupid idea because, you know, fast forward to where we are now. But at the time, you know, my partner was like, you know what, dude, I'm moving back to New York, and I think this company is so stupid that I'm giving you the shares of my company back for free. We had 50% each, right? He's like, yeah, his name is Max. Max Black, everybody. Max Black. The guy who gave away half a moose knuckles. He literally said it, and he's like, I think this company is going nowhere. Like, this is impossible. So fine, you just have my shares back. Like, fine, I'm out of here. Yeah, she's left. So, you know, this next year rolled around, and my cutting factory's going, and my orders got picked up. I got up to about $50,000 in sales. You know, it was okay. It was a slow grind, et cetera, et cetera. I was like, fuck, you know, I'm really not going to get to the next level until, how am I going to make 200 grand or even 100 grand? Well, if I make a coat for $200, I sell it for wholesale for 4, and then retails for 8. Okay, so really I'm making it for 2, I'm selling it for 4, so I'm making $200 profit. How many coats do I have to sell before I cover my costs, make myself a little profit, make up for all those years that I lost money, or 2 years I lost money, and make it sort of scalable? So like, I need to take your money. I need to sell $200,000 worth of coats to make $100,000. That's not $100,000 in my pocket. That's just, you know, I got all sorts of expenses. That'd probably be like 60 grand in my pocket if I'm lucky. I gotta sell 200 grand worth of coats to make 60 grand. Thank God my asshole partner left me, because we had to split that 60 grand. We would have killed each other by then. You know, 3 years into it and 30 grand each. What the fuck? That's terrible. Because we needed to make like $500,000 worth of product to sell it for $1 million before we were going to make some money. Where the hell am I going to get $500,000? Like, this is ridiculous. I don't have $500,000. So I went to a few of the big businesses, big fashion guys around town, and I says, hey man, I got this great idea. Lend me 100 grand. And they're like, are you joking? No, it just doesn't work that way. No one's going to give you 100 grand. And if they do, count yourself lucky. And if they gave it to you, be careful, don't lose it. So I said, okay, now I need some money. I need some money in a big way. The government was offering guaranteed loans to banks to support manufacturers. The manufacturing industry in Canada was dying, as you guys know, or maybe you don't know. 20 years ago, it was very thriving in Canada. Now it's virtually non-existent. Most shit's made in China. So the government was trying to give out grants or guaranteed loans to banks to lend to people in the manufacturing business, because manufacturers employ people. It's good for the economy. So I was like, wow, so if I borrow this money and the government's guaranteeing it, if I don't pay it back, the government's going to pay the bank back. So wait a minute, I can get a loan now. So I went to the bank and I said, yes, I need a loan to buy $100,000 worth of cutting equipment. And they said, okay. I said, yes, well, I have a cutting business right now, and I rent my equipment, and I would like to buy that equipment. And I would like to buy that with your government-sponsored loan. And the bank says, well, very good. Okay, let's go get these machines appraised. I got appraised at $240,000. Cost me $8,000 to get them appraised at that. And the bank says, yes, we will lend you this money. And I was like, this is great. I don't need any collateral. They says, yes, you need some. So I had to put a little bit of my building down, but not much. Because if I defaulted, the government would pay the bank back. So the bank really didn't give a shit about lending money. That's very rare. So I was like, okay. So I don't know if you guys understand yet, but I already own these cutting machines, okay? So I told the bank that I rent them off a buddy, and I'm going to buy them from him. So he was like, I had to find my friend. I was like, hey man, can you pretend you own my shit? I'm going to buy it from you. And the way the loan works is the bank's not going to give me the money to give to you. They're going to pay you directly, because they don't want to see me pocket this money. So they're going to give you the money, so you're going to get 100 grand. But just give the 100 grand back to me, please. Don't screw me on this. So literally, I took out a loan for $100,000 for a machine that I already owned, right? So he gave me 100 grand back, thanks. I think he was a good friend, because he literally could have just taken out a check and said, see ya. And I would have been screwed. So now I hit 100 grand, okay? So now I can make more moose knuckles coats. If I can make $100,000 worth of coats, I can make $100,000 worth of profit. Then I can roll that profit and do it again and again and again. So now I think I'm going in the right direction, okay? Definitely going in the right direction. On the marketing side, I was making coats, and I also made some shirts, okay? I had this big score. If you guys don't think that celebrities help sell your product, you're wrong. They do. In a big way. I didn't even expect this. And it's kind of pathetic that celebrities can help sell your product, because what do celebrities know about clothes, right? in marketing, you also sort of figure out this big, long commercial anyways. So, this guy, Gord Downey, does anyone know who he is? Tragically Hip. He's the lead singer of the Tragically Hip. Does everybody know the Tragically Hip? Okay, so it's okay. Different generation. So anyways, it's a big Canadian band. The lead singer had gotten one of my shirts one day. I met him on a music video shoot, and I gave him one of my shirts, and he was like, "Thanks, dude. Cool shirt." And he turned out he liked it so much that there was an article printed about me and Moose Knuckles in the newspaper some years ago. He was like, "Hey man, that's the guy who gave me that shirt that I love." And so he called me, or his manager called me and says, "Hey man, Gord Downey really likes that shirt. He's wondering if he can get some more from you." I was like, "Really? That was like a year ago. That's crazy." Okay. He's like, "Well, Gord's in Toronto. He wants to meet you." So I met Gord, and Gord's like, "Listen, man, I fucking love that shirt. Would you dress me for my tour?" And I was like, "Yeah, okay." Now I'm rubbing noses with celebrities. Now I'm involved in the action. Now this is what I like. This is great. So I dressed him for his tour. I gave him like 27 shirts, or I made him 27 shirts. Had a lot of fun doing that. And he says, "What can I do in return for you?" And I says, "Well, Paul Renfrew doesn't want to carry my damn coats. And I was wondering if you could call Holt Renfrew." He said, "What?" I said, "Yeah, just call the vice president. Her name's Lenita Layton. Here's her phone number. and just call her and tell her that you like my coats and that they should be carrying the brand Moose Knuckles." And he's like, "Dude, I just thought maybe I put your name on my website." I was like, "No, man, you asked me what I wanted. I want you to call this lady, introduce yourself, and tell her that you love my shit." And he's like, "Okay, man." So that was it. That was it for Gord. Now, Holt Renfrew basically says, I've gone into Holt Renfrew and tried to sell my coats so many times. And he says, "Will, I'm sorry, we don't deal with new people like you. You're a small guy. We're a legitimate business. We don't deal with small guys like you. We're never carrying your brand because you're too small. Come back in 4 or 5 years when you're bigger, for one reason. 2, because your name is Moose Knuckles. Cock and balls. There's no fucking way we're carrying a brand. It's cock and balls in a family store. Are you retarded? And thirdly, cock and balls don't cost $800. So the guy, the buyer just didn't get it. His name is Vic Siegel. He's a buyer of Winners right now. We're actually really good friends. He literally said, "Will, if you keep calling, I'm going to have your number banned from the switchboard. Like, banned. Like, stop it. Like, you're just bugging the shit out of us. We're never carrying your stuff." So anyways, when Gord Downey called his boss, Lenita Layton, he was like, "Hi." Oh yeah, he calls me back the next day and goes, "Will, you wouldn't believe this. I was no way I was going to call. Like, no freaking way. I told my wife the story. My wife pressured me in just to leave a message, just to be guilt-free. So Will, it was 9 o'clock at night. I'm twiddling the number. I decide to call. A lady picks up the phone. I go, "Hi, this is Gord Downey from the Tragically Hip." Phone goes silent. And she's like, "Oh my God, I love you." As it turns out, Lenita Layton was from Kingston, Ontario as well. Gord Downey's from Kingston. They're approximately the same age. They have friends in common. She's been to his shows for a decade. Totally in love with him. They hit it off. He's like, "Now I got a new friend." And I was like, "Holy fuck, well thank you." He's like, "Well, no, thank you. I'm glad you got me to call this lady. That was good. Thanks for dressing me for my show." So, his half an hour of his time, that's what he repaid me. And he got no friends, so for him it was worthwhile. He got shirts and he did a small favor for me. For him it was a small bit of work, but for me it was life-changing because I got a call back from the buyer the next day, Vic Siegel, and he's like, "Will, I don't know what you did, and apparently I have to buy your stuff." Okay? So here's the deal. I'm giving you terrible margins. It's all on consignments, and you're going to get shitty floor space. Okay? Sound good? You in? He's like, "Fuck yeah." So I think he took 30 coats. I was too nervous to go in the whole Renfrew to check him out. Girlfriend at the time, she's like, "Okay, I'll go check him out." She walks in the hall, she comes back, she's like, "Sorry man, they don't have him on the floor." I was like, "Oh, I knew it." Of course, that fucker wouldn't, I knew he wasn't going to put him on the floor. He was going to put him in the back room, he wouldn't sell it, he'd send him back to me. That's just what I figured. And so I called him and says, "You can put my stuff back on the floor." He's like, "What are you talking about? I put it on the floor as soon as I got it." I was like, "Well, it wasn't there." He goes, "Let me just check the computer system." Oh, we sold out of them. I was like, "No." He's like, "No." I said, "Well, no, really? Okay, well, I mean, that's pretty good. That's like 30 coats in a week. Okay, well, I'll tell you what, we'll take 50 more from you." And I'm like, "Really? 50 more?" Boom. Within a week, those sold out as well. So I was like, holy shit, couldn't believe it, So he's like, calls me and says, "Will, how many do you have left?" I was like, "I got like 200. He goes, "Give me everything you got." And I was like, "All right." So I gave him the rest of my coats. Didn't sell all through those 200. That was fine. Basically, if Holt Renfrew could sell 100 coats in 1 year, they could pick that up and they're big. Everybody found out that Wolverine was carrying moose knuckles, and all of a sudden moose knuckles was going to explode. Okay? Going to explode. It was in Holtz and sold out. 3 deliveries. Oh my God, right? That brand, the cock and ball brand, $800 parkas. Yeah, it sold out. So it got traction. And that's where I was like, oh my God, I'm going to be $1 million a year company next year. I'm going to go from 200 grand in sales. Thank God I got that money for those cutting machines and all that shit, because I stayed in the game long enough to get into Holt Renfrew, then I got myself through Holt Renfrew. None of that would have happened without money, guys. Remember my partner left me right away, and he gave me the shares back because his company's going nowhere, because after years worth of work, we were in such a negative position, okay? Well, that was a combination of a lot of things. A, we didn't really know the game yet. We'd never done this before, so we were, walking in the dark. And B, we didn't have money, okay? You need money. Think about it. You want to get into a t-shirt business. How many t-shirts are you going to need to make money? If it costs you $6 for a t-shirt, and you're selling it for 20 bucks, okay? You got $14 profit. How many $14 pieces of profit do you have to make to get a salary out of that? A lot of t-shirts. It's like a shitload of t-shirts, okay? So your idea may be, like, let's do the t-shirt thing, but then realistically, how much money are you going to pull out? How many t-shirts do you have to sell to be able to pull out the kind of money that you want? So once you do that once, you make the t-shirt company, you're like, oh, okay, so now I know how hard it is to sell this many t-shirts, this is how much money I'm going to pull out, and if I want to do this again, I'm going to need much more than t-shirts. I'm going to need pants, sweaters, stuff like that, to be able to pull out a decent living just off this project. But then if I'm going to pull this decent living, I know I'm going to need 200 grand just in raw materials, just that I have to buy 6 months in advance, sew up, and then deliver, and then finally get paid 3 months down the road, right? So that's what you kind of learn. So it was money. You have good ideas, and they may fail because you just didn't give it long enough chance to breathe on the shelves. Like when my partner left me, says, take your shares back, this company's never going to work. I mean, he was right. It didn't seem like it would ever work. But we believed in it, and I kept working hard, and I kept making the money. So I learned how to make money. I spent 90% of my time making money. Okay? 10% of my time on moose knuckles, if you think about it. Because I needed all that money to pay for moose knuckles. Anyways, we're in Holt Renfrew, we're going to be $1 million company. I don't have $1 million. I have no more tricks up my sleeve. I don't know when I'm going to get $500,000 worth of money to be able to satisfy all the orders I'm going to get next year. So I have to go to big fashion. But at least now, I've got a company that did $200,000. I got into Holt Renfrew, and I sold out, and I have the sell report to prove it. I can shop this around to big fashion. So I remember my teacher was the president of the largest coat company in North America, and then right below the G3 Apparel Group was the Levy Group, which was the second largest coat company in North America, the Levy Group. So I called Jeanette and was like, Jeanette, I did it. My coat company is a success. I have a business plan. I made money. She's like, congratulations. I'm sorry, we're a $1 billion company. We're not interested in companies that do $200,000 a year or who may do $1 million a year. I'm sorry, we only deal with companies that do $100 million a year. You're just too small for us to even waste our time. They talk to you. I was like, oh, really? You're bossing at a $1 million company? And she's like, well, yeah, absolutely. We do $1 billion. I mean, $1 million in sales translate into what? 15% profit, $150,000? When you get to that level, your profits go down for a reason. So if you're doing $1 million in sales, you may only make 200 grand in profit. And then you got to take that 200 grand and roll it into the company again so that you can do 1.5 million the next year. And then any profit you get from there, you got to roll them back in the company so you can do 3 million in business the next year. So I now was getting a bigger understanding of how business actually works. It takes even freaking more money to make money. You need so much money to make money. This is even a good freaking business to begin with, right? Unless you get really lucky and you get Dork down and get you in the whole Renfrew and you sell that. And you work very hard. So I went to the Levy Group, who's a smaller company. They were doing about $300 million a year. And I met one of the guys. He was only a couple years older than me. He was one of the owners. And he was like, I can't believe you got into Holt Renfrew. I've been trying to get into Holt Renfrew for years. His father owned a big coat company in Canada. And he's a lawyer, and he's been in the coat business since he was a kid. So he was only a few years older than me, but he was still a very prominent person. He was the CEO of the company. And he knew a lot about coats. And he took an interest because he knew Holt Renfrew, because he had worked in Canada as a kid with his uncle, actually. Sorry. And he was super impressed. He was like, you know what? I'll do business with you. Okay? I was like, great. So now I've got a partner. But little did I realize, I'd done all the hard work, and I had to give this guy 75% of my company just to partner with him. Okay? This is the reality. He had me in a position where I got on Holtz, I sold through, and if I didn't go procure $500,000 worth of raw materials, I would never be able to manufacture them and then deliver on time for next year. So I knew I was going to be $1 million company, and if I wanted to do that, I had to go buy those materials right away. So this part of the Levy group was like, Will, you need to have $1 million right now. I was like, I know. He's like, okay, I'm your partner. I'm taking 75% of your company. You're keeping 25. And I'm like, that's a terrible deal. How about 50-50? He's like, are you joking? We get $300 million a year. We don't give a shit about a company that does $200,000 a year. You want me, I don't want you. And that's kind of true, right? Because guys like that have been in business for so long, they just wait for guys like me to do the work, come up with the ideas, and then they just take it from us. That's how big business works, okay? It's exactly how it works. Because I can't get to the $10 million point without them at all. If I had gone to the bank, or if I had met a wealthy investor who was not in the apparel industry, they could have lent me that money, but I'm pretty sure I would have fucked it up and I would have lost it. Because when you start ordering $1 million worth of fabric from China, if you are nobody, China will just take your money and send you crap, because you're not protected. You almost have to be surrounded by industry leaders who can protect you from getting ripped off. When you're doing overseas transactions, when you're hiring factories, and you're handing out $100,000 here, $100,000 there, trust me, someone's going to see you as an easy fucking target and steal your money. Unless you're owned by big fashion, okay? I didn't know this at the time. I know now. But I guess my rationale was, you know what? I would rather be the president of a company, of a $10 million a year company, than the president and CEO, which means just working by myself with no partners, of a $1 million company that goes bankrupt every year because I get ripped off, or because I don't know what to do. So I partnered with this company. It's been 4 years now since I've been with this company, 4 complete full years. And I, as president, ran the company entirely. They really didn't get involved because they didn't give a shit until this company made over $5 million. Once it made over $5 million, then they're like, okay, well now there's a little bit of profit in there for us. So now we're going to take an active interest in your business. So from 0 to $5 million took me 7 years, pretty much. That's my story in there. Cost of $5 million. Corporates now swooped in down the company, and it's run corporately. We couldn't be opening up stores all around the world. We couldn't be aiming for that $100 million mark unless corporate was there to do it. Okay? Corporate's a big machine. So all along the way, those are my little steps to sort of, you know, get where I wanted to go. You guys understand that now? Right, so, you know, here we are. I'm actually retiring from Moose Knuckles. My current role is president. Corporate is now coming over. I'm going to be the creative director and founder with very little responsibility. So I'm just going to be sort of the face of the brand now, while corporate takes over and hopefully brings it to the next level. So my interest, my activity in the company will be far less than what it is today, which is pretty much everything running as president. Questions?
Anybody have questions?
Yeah. So now I'll tell you what. Well, you know, being very open and honest with you guys as students, I don't know, because I'm going to continue to get paid for Moose Knuckles so long as I don't violate my non-compete clause. Because I built Moose Knuckles, it would be very easy for me to go start and build another company. Okay? And it's like, oh, what's Will Poe doing? He did Moose Knuckles, now what's he doing next? Okay, so let's forget about Moose Knuckles and let's buy into his next co-company. It's an evolution or something like that. So I'm in an interesting dilemma right here. I'm going to get paid for doing nothing, just being the face of Moose Knuckles. Or I can start a new brand and compete against Moose Knuckles. But then I'm kind of competing against myself, and my partners would sue the shit out of me. So, I don't know.
How about the company that doesn't make part of it?
Yeah,
Would that still be competing?
pardon me? If we didn't make partners, to some extent it would be. It didn't matter. I signed a clause agreeing that I'd continue to get paid if I did not compete. So, that's what happens, essentially. It's a real life story, guys.
No more clothing business.
So, yeah, you can't do anything
Clothing
in apparel?
Unless I was to sell my shares in the company. If I unloaded my stock of Moose Knuckles, got rid of my paychecks, yes, I could. But I'd have to do that. Do I want to? I've been working really hard for most of my life. I'm 37. I'm tired. I'm having a kid in 2 months. So I'm thinking of just relaxing for a little bit until the next opportunity presents itself.
But it's a pretty inspiring story, like, and you guys can all take away a lot from it for your own personal careers. Like, what do you think was your leading strategy for success? Obviously hard work and not giving up.
Yeah. Well, it can answer in a lot of ways, but one of the things that I remember was staying in the game long enough for it to work out. Like, I didn't want to design anything wacky and crazy. I wanted to bring a really good product to market. In the beginning, everyone says it's not going to work, but I'd done my research. I'd done my master's thesis. I'd studied these other Canadian companies that were selling their branded Canada stuff. I branded the company. I thought it was pretty interesting. Everyone I talked about it was pretty interesting. So I kind of knew that I had something. When my partner gave up, he gave up. Have your freaking shares back. I'm out of here, man. That was a waste of my life. That was a waste of my year. That happens, right? I probably should have, well, no, I probably should have. I could have quit. I almost wanted to quit, but I didn't. So I think affording to stay in the game long enough. I had my cutting factory so I could make some money. And then, I figured out how to scam some money off the banks. I paid them back, by the way. No criminal activity there. So it was all good. So just the tenacity to stay in the game long enough, because I really believed in my shit.
Have you heard from, the guy that left you since? What does he think about all of this?
Yeah, so the dean of the fashion school in New York City, the dean of the master's program, he just came down to Montreal to see me and hang out with me for his birthday, actually. Yeah, and he told me a story. The guy's DJing in Berlin. He's DJing in Berlin. He's like 40 years old and he's DJing in Berlin. So I guess he's still figuring out what he wants to do in his life.
So he hasn't tried to contact you or anything?
I'm pretty sure he knows the story. Yeah. We don't talk anymore. It's a little awkward, actually.
You said it was really hard for you to get the money you needed.
Yeah.
If somebody comes to you with the same idea, would you be the kind of person who helps, or?
Yeah. Again, but I say ideas are now a dime a dozen, because I could be like, well, I could probably just do that myself. Thanks for your idea. I could just switch around a little bit, and the gears will start working. Because now I know how to run a company from the ground up. I kind of know everything about a company. So that what I got most out of this experience, besides money, was an understanding of how to run a business. And that's invaluable. I can take that and go anywhere. So if the other guy came up to me with the idea, I'd be like, oh shit, and I kind of have to deal with myself 10 years ago. Okay, little kid. So I'll tell you what, I'm going to give you $0 for 75% of your company. What would you say to me? Yeah, you're going to give me you come to me and say, hey, I need help with this product, it's really selling. And I said, sure, I'll be your partner, but you're going to give me 75% of the company, and I'm going to give you $0 for it. What do you think about that?
Well, there's no money to buy the next load of material with. Yeah.
Okay, so if a guy came to me with an idea, the hardest part would be to tell him, like, look, kid, I know you got this idea, but unless you got a real business plan that's actually generating a lot of money, not that could generate a lot of money, I'll partner with you, but you got to give me most of your company. You guys watch the Dragon Dens? Remember that was like, I'll give you they want 200 grand. I was like, I'll give you 20 grand, and you got to give me 70% of the company. They go, that's fucking crazy. And that's sort of the realities. I would only do it if that was the case, and that's kind of hard to say to little kids, like, yeah, sorry, I hate to be the one to burst your bubble this way, but this is kind of the deal that I got, and here it is, 8 years later, and actually turns out that actually was a fair deal. It was a fair deal to give 75% of my company away, because I would have been bankrupt in the first year, and I would have had nothing anyways, right? Right.
But that also wasn't your first step, was to go get money. You worked really, really hard to float yourself to that point, which is, I think, an important point. Get yourself there first, and show how hard you worked, and then you're able to present yourself to them.
Right, stay in the game. Because I can't stress how important it is to make money. So let's say you get a job and it's not what you want to be doing, but it's paying the rent and you can eat with that money. And that's like one hand just holding on to your life. And you get your other hand free and do your creative shit and do your business projects on the side. And then as soon as you can start making enough money, then you can quit your day job. But I can't stress how important it is to always be making money. You need money to make money. It's as simple as that. Ideas, fine, they're good, but they don't pay the rent. And what you'll soon realize is that ideas, if they do pay the rent, it'll take many years for them to actually be fruitful. So you need jobs. You need to learn how to borrow money. Go to the bank and borrow some money, then pay it back so you can start building your credit up. Just little small things like that. There's little small steps you can take in life. If you know where you want to go and you want to get there, remember how crucial money's going to be. Money's actually almost everything. I gave away 75% of my company just so I could get financing, okay? And it was actually a good deal in retrospect. I made the right choice. Tough pill to swallow. What? I'm giving you 75% of my company for $0? Tough pill to swallow, but money. Work on it. Think about it a lot, okay?
Any other questions?
What advice would you give to young entrepreneurs starting to get into the industry?
What advice?
So like,
Okay.
everything for students.
All right, so definitely recommend the internship, guys. Like, if you can get in, how the whole thing works, not just the stupid job they give you, what every person in the company does. Try to understand what's going on. As soon as you've done that, change. Go get another internship. I don't know if you guys have to do internships, do you? Yeah? So, I mean, that's one of the first things. Get your internships and figure out what's going on in that company, how they're making money. Do not leave that place until you understand how they pay everybody's salary, who the guy at the top is, and how much he makes, how much the sales are, and how much they're profiting off those sales. Some very simple questions. You can always ask your boss, how much money does this company generate? Okay? He says, well, we're doing $6 million. Okay, what's your revenue on $6 million? I'm like, okay, nosy kid. You know, I'm not going to tell you that, but that's what you want to try to figure out. And then, as you're older in life, you should be able to sort of look at every company and be like, that guy generates this much revenue, that guy generates this much revenue, that's how much profits from that revenue, that's how much he profits from that revenue. So you can, everywhere you can go, you can kind of see businesses as dollar-generating businesses. Not just as like, oh, the cool things they do, but actually how much money they generate. You remember, business is all about making money. When you're young, you think it's all glamorous. When you're young, you have an idealized version of the world. When you're older, the older you get, you realize that it really just comes down to money. You're in business for money, let's face it. Yeah.
If there's something you could have changed in the past about your company, how would you have done it?
Something that would have changed in the past with my company? Changed with my company?
As in, like, to improve the state it is in now, like, better success.
Well, I don't know, because, you know, you don't want to look back and feel regret about anything, because it's turned out to be pretty successful. I think, if anything, I go back, I would have worked harder again. Just like, tried harder, had a better attitude, be friendlier, make more friends on the way up, I think.
How important is it to like network in your job and get to know people in the industry, and how small is the industry?
It's a tiny industry. It's very small. It's important to network, obviously, because the world is a smaller place now. I missed out because I worked in a factory up in Scarborough for a long time, and I kind of find that to be really lonely. Yeah, it's important to network. I mean, you're gonna chart your own path in life, and everything's. Your path is a series of little steps, because you don't necessarily know how to get there, but as long as you just keep walking with little steps, one foot in front of the other, you're going to get there. And if you're networking along the way, that's going to make that path so much easier. So yeah, I mean, the more you network, the easier your path's going to be.
How important is attitude?
Attitude. You need a little bit of fuck you. You need a little bit of thank you. I mean, attitude's, yeah, it's important. I mean, attitude. Don't get pushed around. You know, you gotta be tough too, right? My boss, when I was a kid, he says, you know what, I think you're gonna make it because you have just the right amount of fuck you. And I didn't understand what that meant at the time because I was a teenager. But I understand what it meant. It's because when you start getting into business, people always just want your money. They try to take money from you. You need to have a little bit of fuck you to realize that, oh, people are actually just out for money. They don't necessarily care about me. So that's the fuck you part.
Good. Anybody else? Okay. Well, thank you so much for coming. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for being here.
Thanks, guys. Very nice to meet you. Good luck.
And good luck for me too, because we're done. So I won't see you guys. So email me, keep me in the loop of life.
You guys can all find me on Facebook, okay?
Did you say come find you?